Hello, I'm Carrie Fristo. I'm here from Lioness magazine, and I'm here to interview Robin Hauser, who directed and produced her newest film, which is called Savvy. And it's a film about women and empowering women to take charge of their financial lives. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
The first question I had was, you have a background in marketing and international business. So how did you make the leap from that to documentary filmmaking?
Right. Well, the background, that's true. I have an international business degree, but that was many years ago. I've always had a keen interest in photography. And, but I worked, once I got my MBA, I worked as a stockbroker over in Europe. So I wasn't in filmmaking. I never went to film school. But as I said, I've had this very keen interest in photography for years. And I always thought it would be just amazing someday to venture into visual storytelling. So about 12 years ago now, I was lucky enough to be able to throw my hat in the ring and see whether or not, this was something that actually, would be a worthy career for me. And it's turned out that it has. So I feel incredibly fortunate to late in life come into documentary filmmaking.
Yeah, it is a really neat story. Savvy, did something in your personal life inspire your desire to make a movie about women and their financial health?
Yeah, I like many women, I considered myself financially savvy. After all, I have my MBA, I understand how the economy works. And I was in a marriage for 25 years that was, fairly traditional. And I think like a lot of marriage, you have division of labor. But I didn't really keep an active role in finances. And so at age 50, I found myself divorced and having to really, for the first time in 25 years, be solely responsible for my financial well-being. And it's been an interesting journey. And so I really started worrying and being concerned about other women who, maybe haven't kept up with their personal finances and then suddenly end up in a situation where they're responsible for their own finances. And, whether somebody's divorced or widowed, there's a lot of situations where people are in financially abusive relationships and just don't know how to get out, right? So it was a subject that was interesting to me, and because of personal experience, but also something I've just been thinking about for a while. What really shocked me, Carrie, was when I learned that millennial women there's a higher percentage of millennial women who abdicate major financial decisions to somebody else, and usually that's the man in their life, which is shocking to me, right? So this isn't just a situation that our grandmothers, might have had, or our mothers, or our generation, but this is something that's not getting better.
Yeah, that is interesting. So there's a taboo about women talking about money in general. Do you find, how about women filmmakers? I mean, is there a taboo about trying to get funding for films?
Well, I'm not sure that's gendered. Yes, I think it's very difficult to raise money for documentary films for any independent film. It's quite challenging. I'm not sure. I've only ever been a female filmmaker, so I don't know whether or not there's sort of a bias against that because of my gender. I will say that my background in business has really helped. I think I've been able to be a little bit more creative about how to fundraise than, say, most filmmakers who are incredibly creative, brilliant in so many ways, but maybe don't have the business background to understand, how to go about fundraising.
How long did it take you to make the film?
It took me about 18 months to make Savvy. We were delayed, of course, because of COVID. So I was only about 2/3 of the way through filming when COVID hit, almost a year ago, right? Last March. Mm-hmm. And I still had quite a bit of filming to do that was scheduled for April and May of last year. And we had to really, put the brakes on that. Fundraising became incredibly challenging during COVID because, understandably, there were many companies and individuals who typically would maybe contribute to a documentary film like this one, who were diverting their attention to really immediate frontline needs for COVID. So I stepped back a little bit in my efforts to fundraise until, say, June of 2020, when I began, felt like it was appropriate to move forward. But that was, so we were delayed with fundraising, but we were also delayed in filming. We had plans to film in New York City, and New York, of course, was hit really heavily with COVID. So we had to be creative. We ended up changing some of the subjects that were in the film, and we convinced some of our subjects, and they were very gracious to do so. Once they felt it was safe to travel, we flew them to California rather than my flying, the entire team back east and having to quarantine for 14 days. So we pivoted, but we managed, and we made the film in about 18 months.
Well, that's really great. I mean, especially with all that's going on, that's a pretty good time frame. I'm curious, how do we actually get past the taboo of talking about money?
Yeah, talking about money, it is interesting, isn't it? And that's somewhat cultural. It's also very much gendered. Men in our society, especially in the United States, men don't seem to have quite as much of the taboo about talking about money. You can imagine being at a cocktail party where they're talking about their latest purchase of Bitcoin, or the stock that they bought and how well it's doing, or probably rarely how not well it's doing if they're talking about it publicly. But people don't look at men the same way when they're talking about money. But it is rare to find a group of women that are talking about their personal finances and sharing with each other. And because of that, we're at a real disadvantage. So we don't have sort of a sounding board to learn about how to invest, or how to save, or what are the best investment opportunities, or even how much should I save for my retirement, right? And women, I think, have felt often marginalized from this sort of the investment world, not on purpose. I don't think Wall Street on purpose tried to keep women out. I think it just wasn't, when it was established, it wasn't really a female thing. It was made by men, pretty much with men in mind. And therefore a lot of women are intimidated by all the acronyms, by the warlike analogies. And it takes a while, to get comfortable with that. There are some really amazing programs out there that are trying to help women, that are helping women become more knowledgeable and comfortable in investing. Ellevest is one that comes to mind that Sally Krawcheck is CEO of and founder of. So I hope there's progress. There's also a lot of apps these days, fintech apps, that make it easier to invest, right? And to learn about finance. So hopefully these type of things will change. But even with all these apps, it doesn't necessarily change our culture. And if the culture suggests that finance is male territory, right? That it's a man's job, especially in a heterosexual relationship, then that's not really gonna encourage women to take an active role in understanding and managing finances.
Right. Well, I wonder, I mean, I understand that the cultural taboos, but also just the thought of, before a couple gets married, about, if a woman asks how much a man makes, or if a woman asks, how are we going to live, it could be seen as mercenary in some way, that, that she's a gold digger or something,
Yeah, it could be seen as sort of, you can really imagine that that woman's future partner could act defensive about it, right? But it's incredibly important that a woman knows how much her future spouse makes, right? And how much debt they might have. Do they still have student loan debt? Do they have debt? Is there inheritance? I mean, these are just things that are important. And even more than that, I think it's important to understand, you know, how are you similar or how are you dissimilar when it comes to money? Are you comfortable being highly leveraged with a lot of debt? Do you believe in contributing now to your 401k, even if you're only in your late 20s, right? Or is it better? Do you feel like, no, I have my whole life to save, I'm not going to start now, right? So those are things that I think you really need to understand. What do you value? Do you value vacation, spending money on vacations, or improving your house? You know, these are things that I think are really important to discuss before, but especially understanding, you know, what type of debt does your future partner have? What type of savings do they maybe have? How much do they make? And how much do they owe?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think because this is a person that you feel strongly about and you have a certain kinship with, because you're going to get married, you assume, wrongly in some cases, that they feel the same way you do about these things without asking, you know, and that's a big mistake.
That's right. It's also not that comfortable to talk about money, right? So it's not that romantic. It's not that, but let me tell you something. It's incredibly important, because when you get over that honeymoon period and you didn't know, you know, that your future partner is heavily in debt or has horrible credit. We haven't even talked about that, but, you know, has really bad credit. And so you together can't, you know, buy a house, for example, or buy a car or lease a car because you can't, you know, and once you're married, that bad credit of your spouse is going to be linked to you as well. And that can be a problem. So there are a lot of reasons that you need to be able to talk about money openly. You also need full transparency in a relationship, I really believe.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I understand that, you know, there is sort of a division of labor, you know, a lot of times within a couple. And so one of them is better at this, so they do that, you know, but so that makes it difficult then for the other partner to say, okay, well, I know that you're better at finance, but I need to know where the money is too, you know, and that's it. So the question is, number one, is one person particularly more knowledgeable about, say, you know, how to invest money or how to save money or you know, those type of things. And if so, then great. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you both can't decide together, how much should we put into savings? How much should we spend on vacation? You know, can we afford a vacation? Can we afford to, you know, send the kids to summer camp, right? I mean, all of these things you need to have open discussions about. And I'm also a really firm believer in my account, your account, and our account. I mean, when you have only a joint account, you know, do you really want to have to ask permission to buy a sweater? You know, probably not. And if you have your own money, there's also, you know, in these financially abusive relationships, it's immensely important for anybody, whether you're male or female, living in a situation, to have some personal money, because money means freedom. Right? Money means you can get out if you need to. It means that you can change jobs if you're in a horrible work situation. It's sort of this, you know, take this job and shove it money, right? At least for temporarily. And it's certainly, if you're in an abusive relationship, it's your ticket to get out of that too. So I think it's really important. You know, there's some people that are stuck in relationships where they're not even allowed to work. And that's frightening. But I think if we teach our you know, young women and girls how to be financially savvy, how to be financially responsible and financially independent, you know, then you're not going to get into a situation like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. I mean, you've got to get away from the whole princess thing where, you know, someone's going to come swoop in and take you to his castle and then buy you ponies.
Well, that's it. That's it exactly. It's this fairy tale that, oh, I'm now getting married, and he's going to take care of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else is going to take care of you. But there are examples in Savvy documentary where, you know, a young woman in her early 30s, they had a 5-year-old son together, and you know, just on the cusp of a long life together. They just bought a bigger house. They decided to put their son into private school, and you know, sadly, he goes out on a bike ride and is hit by a car and doesn't survive it. And you know, the mom, the woman, is left not knowing if they, you know, had a mortgage and who the mortgage was with, and not knowing how much money they had really in savings. They hadn't even executed their wills. So these are things that are really, they're not, you don't want to get married, you know, planning for divorce or planning for being widowed or something. Of course not. But we all have to be responsible. We all have to prepare for the worst with, you know, hoping for the best.
Right. Well, this is fascinating, and I you know, the movie sounds wonderful. Tell us where it's making its premiere.
Savvy documentary is going to premiere at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. That's coming up April 1st through April 10th. And there are virtual tickets available, which is fun. So anyone in the US can watch the film during that time period. There are also 2 drive-in screenings. One's on Saturday, April 3rd at 3:30 in the afternoon down on the beach by Santa Barbara Community College. And the other one is Monday morning at 8:30, bright, so grab your coffee and come on down at the same location.
Oh, that's really neat. That sounds great. Well, Robin, it's been lovely having you, and thanks so much. And this movie, I think, is going to be very important for a lot of women to see.
Well, thank you. I think so too. I think it's a must-see for all of our daughters and sisters and mothers. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you.